found so many that I missed or that I was scared to watch or that I just did not know about from the 80s horror. And you go back and you see these and you go, oh my God, this movie was so good. How did I miss that? Why didn't I watch that when I was a kid? And it's just latching on to so many more people, and so many more people are enjoying 80s horror. Hello, fellow followers, and welcome back to FanZcene. Greg here, and today I have for you, there will never be anything like 80s horror ever again. And that is so true, and the idea for this video was inspired by this that you see right here. I saw this posted from so many people throughout my Twitter, Instagram, all over my feeds. It was just everywhere because it resonated with so many people, and because 80s horror means so much to so many people, and it really was a fantastic genre of horror at that time in the 80s. Not to say that the 70s and 60s horror and like the 50s, like the Universal Monsters horror wasn't great, because those were great. Like I would say from probably about like the 50s into the 80s was probably the best era period of horror, with the 80s just being the greatest in my book, in my opinion. And it just felt like at that time in the 80s, that the movies were more creative, the movies were funner, they were scarier, they were cheesier, they were campier, they were just a good time. It just like all the creative juices were flowing. People were doing things in these horror movies that you probably couldn't get away with today. I mean, they were really pushing the envelope. They were pushing the limit of what kind of blood, what kind of gore, what kind of horror, what kind of atmosphere, what kind of practical effects could they do. And the practical effects of the 80s in these 80s horror movies are just top notch. I mean, we had the emergence of Rick Boutine, Stan Winston, Tom Savini, K&B. It was just, Greg Nicotero and them guys. It was just an amazing time. And to this day, practical effects cannot be beaten by CGI. And it's really saying something when you look at some of the CGI now and see that it's actually gotten worse than it did when CGI first started. So practical effects in my book are just top notch. I mean, like The Thing, all the stuff in The Thing that was done, all that practical effects. I mean, we had people like John Carpenter. Stephen King was actually Stephen King at that time. We had so many great Stephen King movies, and it was just so many great movies all together. And for better or worse, you had like those cult that became cult films, those movies that just were like horror, and I just think about these movies. I'm sorry, I try to explain them in the best way I can, but yeah, you had those low budget shot on video horror films that were like a little unnerving. Like, dude, you gotta see this movie. This movie is so disgusting and disturbing, so bad. And you had this, it's just so bad, they're so good horror movies. You had the high value production horror movies. And we had what I really, really enjoyed. What I loved was like the emergence of like Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, Leatherface, Pinhead, which I felt was very much akin to the Universal Monsters, Dracula, Frankenstein, the Mummy, the Invisible Man. It was like the second coming of those people, and I still think it would be so exciting to have like a movie that feature all these 80s monsters in one movie, sort of like the Universal Monsters, if it was done right, or heck, even like the Universal Monsters meet the 80s monsters, because that would have been so amazing. That would have been something cool, and that was just so great. And we even had the reemergence of Anthony Perkins, Norman Bates, Psycho, which was all-time great. Psycho 2 by Tom Holland is just like a truly great sequel. That's how you do a sequel, and that was something that was very hard to do at that time. I mean, Alfred Hitchcock did Psycho, and how were you ever going to top that movie? Well, Tom Holland came out and he did the best he could, and you know what? Psycho 2 is a pretty dang good movie. And yes, it did lead to Psycho 3, which wasn't as good, but it was just like the reemergence of that, and like it was so amazing. And as being someone as I am a straight person, a straight man, and just to be able to see so many great boobs in horror movies, from Barbara Crampton and just so many of them, Leanna Quigley. I know. And today, day and age, that doesn't really fly, and people don't like hearing about it. But it was something that was special, and it was something that was like akin to 80s horrors. Like sex and horror go together; they sell, and it was you don't see that today. That's being lost in today's thing, and I understand, I get it, but it's something to be said about that. And I do feel like they sort of go hand in hand. TNA, sex, horror, and I know today today, you know, even if they were to ever go back to that in some type of horror movie today, I would be absolutely fine for the women or the men out in the audience that would like to see a man. You know, that's fine. If you guys want to see that, as long as I get to see some boobs again, I think that would be great compromise again. But it was so great to see all this in that time, and growing up and, you know, being, it's probably watching some of these movies before the time you should have. And I can remember being scared of them, and my older brother watching them, and, you know, I kind of peek around the corner stuff, and then, you know, got older, got into them. And, you know, for a lot of us who were born later in the 80s and then sort of grew up in the late 80s, early 90s into the 90s, we still grew up with those 80s horror movies, and they've just like latched on. They've meant so much to so many people, and it's a time and a period of horror that I really don't think will ever come back again, much like it says. I mean, it was such a great time, and I love seeing all the love for 80s horror today in today's world, especially knowing how the state of entertainment is today, because like I said, you really couldn't get a lot of stuff that was done in the 80s today. I mean, there's so much studio interference, pandering, forcedness into the movies, content. It just feels more like content than where I really felt like people in the 80s, they were trying to deliver a entertainment, trying to deliver the best special effects. They were pushing the boundaries of special effects because there was no CGI. If you wanted a spider head or something, you know, very like that, you had to build it, you had to make it, and it took an army of people and creative decisions and artists to do it, and that's lost today. And the writers and the directors just seemed like they were pouring all their heart and love into this. And I love the fact that the 50s helped inspire the 80s, and it's just this time of innocence and good and evil and right and wrong, and it was just something that I just love, and I love being able to go back and watch them. And I love in today's day and age, as a physical media collector, that I can buy these movies. I'm going back and watching my favorites that I had when I was a kid, and finding more movies through so many other various means, like the In Search of Darkness movies, through Shout Factory, Scream Factory, their label Scream Factory, which has just celebrated 10 years. Congratulations to you, Scream Factory. But I found so many that I missed, or that I was scared to watch, or that I just did not know about from the 80s horror. And you go back and you see these and you go, oh my God, this movie was so good. How did I miss that? Why didn't I watch that when I was a kid? And it's just latching on to so many more people, and so many more people are enjoying 80s horror and wishing that it could come back, but it won't come back. And much as I would love for the 80s horror to come back, I don't know because it's like, yes, that's a time in horror. That's a time of movies that we love. And to try to recapture that or copy it doesn't necessarily always work. But maybe we can like find our way back to sort of that vein. Because like I said, the 50s helped inspire the 80s. They, you know, maybe those kids that grew up in the 80s, instead of trying to limit and work inside this studio box, you can go outside of that box and try to recapture your love, what made you love 80s horror and the special effects and all that. And, you know, maybe you can put that into a movie, and maybe you can make a new era of horror that is akin to the 80s era of horror, and give us some great movies again, because we are losing movies and entertainment. It just doesn't feel like it. And I absolutely love 80s horror, and I will stand on this. I will not give up my love for 80s horror. And if I had it, if somebody said, hey, do you want to watch this 80s horror movie, or do you want to watch this new modern horror movie, I'm going to go 80s horror every time. So let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments section down below. Are you a fan of 80s horror? Do you miss 80s horror? Do you think 80s horror could ever make a comeback? Because that would be awesome, but I just don't know. Let me know all this in the comments section down below, because I do like reading your guys' comments. And if you liked what you saw here, please hit that like button, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. Consider joining and becoming a channel member if you're interested. Share the video out for everybody to see. I thank you guys for watching. Always support physical media. It is a superior format. Watching some 80s horror films, especially getting into spooky season. And wherever you are, please have a great, safe, happy, healthy day, morning, afternoon, evening, and night. Godspeed.